Hey everybody, this is Perch. How well are the comic companies doing? The problem is this question is a trap question. If you haven't realized it yet, in any kind of online argument or discussion, there is not a single right answer to this question. And depending on who you're talking to, depending on, the conversation you're having, you're going to have people with very strong opinions of everything's doing great, everything's doing bad, or sometimes my absolute favorite is the simultaneous everything is doing great and everything is doing bad, which is usually the one that a lot of, I would say, comic professionals have. Whereas the comic industry is doing amazing. Look at these numbers. Everything is going great. Look at all these jerks on YouTube who say are doing bad. Those guys are jerks. It's doing wonderful. P.S. DC is a dumpster fire. And oh my God, do you see what they're doing with these layoffs? And this is a destruction and a terrible company. All those things can't be true all simultaneously. But anyway, we're not going to dive into that particular rabbit hole at the moment. The challenge is with this question, it is both a trap question and it's also a fairly irrelevant question if you really think about it. And what I mean by that is, my question to you is, are you reading comics you enjoy? If the answer is yes, then the comic industry is doing fine for you. Be selfish for a moment. Just think about yourself. What other people say about whether it's doing horribly or whether it's doing wonderfully is kind of irrelevant if you don't have anything you like to read. I mean, would it make anyone feel any better if the comic industry was making 20x the money and everything, the comics were selling out and the average comic that was going out the door was selling 200,000 copies, the average comic. And regularly comics were selling 1 million copies. But you as a reader had absolutely nothing you liked. It was all crap. None of those comics excited you or entertained you in the slightest. Does it matter then if it's doing really well? It doesn't. You're not happy. You're not getting what you want. You're going to tap out. Unless you're a shareholder in Marvel or DC, whether it's doing great or doing poorly is well, whether if it's doing great, that's somewhat irrelevant unless you're benefiting from it financially or are enjoying the content. If it's doing terribly, it's a little bit of a different story because there, you might want to jump into action to try and save something. If you love comics, but the comic industry is on the brink of death, you may be asking yourself, hey, what do I need to do in order to help revive it, in order to help it survive? I don't know how many people actually think that way. Maybe people, maybe nobody. I don't know. But that therein lies a whole other kind of morass of questions and thoughts. What should you do? The only sustainable thing that I found works is you have to align your own personal enjoyment, your own personal love for comics with the efforts you're doing to quote unquote save it. It doesn't help. Like, for example, if you go to a comic shop and you don't like that comic shop, it's dirty, you're treated rudely, you just the copies are always gone, maybe stuff's in bad condition, you just hate going there. It's not a good experience. But you love comics and you want to support comics and you want to keep reading comics, so you hear that this comic shop that you dislike is in dire straits. It's doing poorly. And so you think to yourself, well, even though I hate it, even though I'm not happy with the content, the service, the way I'm treated as a customer, I'm going to start buying more there to support it financially. That is a bad decision. It won't work. You will not be able, unless you're literally able to just send them money and kind of forget about it. You've just got money that you could just toss out the window and you don't care where it goes. Eventually, you're going to question that decision. You're going to feel bad about the money you're spending and you're going to stop. The same thing is true with people who maybe have collected Marvel comics for 40 years and you love those characters and you love those things, but you find yourself in a place where none of those characters speak to you anymore. Continuing to buy those comics out of habit is only going to lead you to become bitter and unhappy. It's not going to be a successful thing, and eventually you will quit. When we talk about solutions for the comic industry, charity and just continuing to spend when you're not happy about it is not a solution. That's just delaying the inevitable, and it's not a healthy fix to the industry. Unfortunately, in a lot of businesses, people kind of go for those fixes. They're usually easier. They prey on emotion or guilt sometimes, and they have a more immediate result. You can see some benefit very, very quickly. It's why a lot of GoFundMe's and things get set up for people, and you see some initial cash kind of flow into that in the first 24, 48 hours. You see an almost immediate initial benefit, but over time, it falls apart. And of course, it falls apart because people need to be able to invest and contribute their lives to things they care about. And if those things get disconnected, it never lasts. But back to the kind of core initial question, the challenge with this idea of, is the comic industry doing good or doing bad, is it all comes back a little bit to, that's in the eye of the beholder. If you're licensing away Batman and you're making steady money, then your view of the comic industry is probably fairly positive. It's means to an end. You are able to successfully take property A to customer B and make some money in that process, and life is good. If you're an indie comic creator and you were previously doing stuff for like $500, $1,000 for a book, and you're breaking even, and then one day you get a job at Marvel and you're writing titles there, and suddenly you're making $60,000, $70,000 in a year, your world's gotten much better. You're probably your view of the comic industry is probably pretty positive. On the other hand, on the other hand, yes, it is a fact that comic sales are not at the levels they were at when the newsstand was in play. And when I say not at the level they're at, there's two factors to that. One, there were less comics being visible to people. There's less comics out there for you to see. It's harder to find them. It's harder to go grab them. This has been a problem for a while. And two, there's less overall volume of comics being sold. Now, you can get into arguments with people, and God knows I have, where we talk about the fact that what's going better. Is it YA? Is it manga? Is it Western comics? Is it old Western comics? Is it back issues? And you could talk yourself around those places until you're exhausted, because there are facts that benefit all sides that can be thrown out kind of on a whim, but they don't get you anywhere. That's why at the end of the day, you have to kind of throw up your arms and say, unless you're working for those companies, unless you're a shareholder of those companies, the only real metric that matters to you is you as a customer enjoying or not enjoying these comics. And as I've talked about in other videos, the industry has gotten into this very strange place where there are fans, there are customers who feel, for whatever reason, and there's many different reasons, that they were personally wronged in some way by these companies. And so rather than just saying, hey, I'm not going to buy Spider-Man anymore, they wake up in the morning and hope for bad news. They hope to hear that Marvel has lost a lot of money. They hope to hear for mass layoffs. They hope to hear for firings. And that's a psychology that I really don't think people within the comic industry know what to do with. It's on the surface, they just write that off as, well, those are kind of the angry trolls. We'll write off that, whatever it is, 5%, 10% of the audience is just being crazy malcontents, and screw them. Eventually they'll wander away and hate something else. But the evidence in front of us suggests that they're not going to wander away, because this isn't like a passive dislike. It's an active dislike. It's people who feel wronged, correctly or incorrectly. And this is where I had an argument with a comics editor just a couple days ago, and not argument's too strong a word, a disagreement. And the editor wanted to really go into why it was irrational for people to hate these companies, why the people who hate these companies were wrong for wanting to hate them, why their hatred was not reasonable. And my comment back was, it doesn't matter whether their hatred is reasonable or unreasonable, because first of all, that's your choice to use whatever words you want, and it doesn't mean anything. Whether labeling it reasonable or unreasonable doesn't get you anywhere, and it doesn't matter whether all their anger is justified or not justified, or if they were misled, or whatever it happens to be. This editor was really like, there's a couple people in comics on YouTube who are like the Pied Piper, and they're leading all these comic fans to hating comics, and they're leading all these people to want to really dislike what's going on. And it's like, okay, um, let's assume for the moment that that's true. What are you going to do about it? So what? I mean, are you suggesting somebody like Marvel take out a hit on some of these people? Of course not. That's insane. So what are you going to do? Do you suggest that maybe some people at Marvel should reach out to some of these, these larger names and try and kind of coax them to like their product? Turn them into influencers for your company? Is that what you want to do? Like, what is the plan? Just identifying that, hey, there's a bunch of people that listen to a smaller handful of people and they get all angry about comics, and then they think the comic industry is dying and this is a problem. It's like, okay, you've said a lot of things there, but what is your solution? If that is what you believe, and make no mistake about it, no matter what is said in public on social media and other places, the people in the comic companies, in particular the big two, and even more in particular at Marvel, are very, very aware that there is this dislike of their company and of their people and their policies. They know it. And even though they hand wave stuff around like, I just block them, they're a bunch of lunatics, forget about it, they think about this daily. They are constantly thinking about this. The problem is, in all of the thinking about it, there's no solutions coming up. There's no like, hey, what should we do? What proactively should we do to change this? And bear in mind, I'm not suggesting that they should all like tuck their tail between their legs and go out and do a big apology tour and say we've lost our way and anything else. I'm just saying you have to have a plan. How are you going to address this? Ignoring is not a plan. And a lot of people, I think, believe it is. They believe like, hey, you don't feed the trolls. Okay, but just doing nothing. We've been trying the just do nothing plan for a while now, and it is doing dick all to solve this problem. We are still here, still continuing, still going on, and it's exhausting. Ignoring things is not making anything better. But in general, like if you find yourself in this conversation, if you're online, you're going to find yourself in this conversation sooner or later. Is the comic industry doing great? Is it dying? Is it imploding? What's wrong with it? Like I said, it's a trap discussion. It's a discussion where no matter what you do, there's no way to definitively, quote unquote, win. There's lots of people who say they have proof one direction or another. They have facts, but these facts don't lead to any ultimate conclusion. It doesn't lead to anywhere that settles the discussion once and for all. And so for your own sanity, the best thing to do is just to decide for yourself, is the comic industry doing badly? Well, are you enjoying comics? Are there comics you're enjoying? If the answer is no, or not very many, or I used to buy 50 comics and now I buy one, then the answer is, for you, the comic industry is doing very badly. If you say, hey, I used to buy these 20 comics from this company, but now I buy this 20 comics from this other company, and I still find things I can enjoy, then the comic industry is doing just fine. Be selfish. That's ultimately where you have to get to. There's the reality is whether, and I post these videos and it's aggravating because I'll post a video saying, hey, DC is hiring some people, and I get these responses like, oh, these roles all suck. You think DC's doing great? It's like, I don't, in the most direct way possible. I don't care if this role is going to make the company great or not great. This is data. We're looking at it. We're analyzing it. I certainly want more comics to read. So in my view, I'm probably the most negative person around, because what I would like to see is 100% of the comics being published have an audience, are going somewhere, have strong interest and engagement, and the numbers are growing exponentially month after month. That's what I would like to see happen. So until that happens, I'm going to continue to say that the comic industry has a lot of work to do to get better. At the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say that, next month the entire comic industry is going to go away, because that's hyperbole. It's just it's being it's not it doesn't get us anywhere. As again, your mileage may vary. Maybe that's the too long didn't read of this whole video. Your mileage may vary. And just be cautious about getting baited into arguments that have no outcome that gets you anywhere. I think there's, this is my own unique personality, I guess. I hate being in an echo chamber. I'll find myself, and this is as much a flaw as anything. If I'm in a room and suddenly everybody is in agreement with me, I find myself surrounded by 20 people who all agree with me. I start thinking I'm on the wrong. I start thinking something's wrong, and I start thinking I should change my opinion irrationally. There's no rationale between what for that attitude. If I find myself in strong agreement with everybody else around me, I suddenly start thinking that I must be on the wrong track somehow. I don't know. It's a sickness. What can you do? Anyway, hey, what do you think? What do you can you look at things and say, look, if I'm enjoying comics, comics are good. If I'm not enjoying comics, comics are bad. Can it be that simple for you? Let me know in the comments below. Like, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, subscribe twice. Do all the things, whatever you want to do. Confuse YouTube by subscribing and unsubscribing 4 times today and see what they do. Who knows? Anyway, thank you for listening. Have a great day.